here. I see your name in the attendee list, but
Yeah, it
it
means
looks...
so if there is no microphone or video logo, it means that the permissions are yet to be granted for Beve. So in Beve, you have to give permissions in a browser or on your mobile phone before it actually can connect to the camera. Not that Beve would be difficult even without that, but yeah. So, yeah, there is a discussion in the chat from Brett asking why do we have so many meetings this week? And actually, it's a totally legit question because we had presentation by Rajiv 1 hour ago. Next hour, we will have a presentation by JNM about Key6 integration service. And yeah, I highly recommend everyone to join this presentation. So the question is for the today's community meeting is actually whether we have any topics. I definitely want to work with Mac on the Keptn Community Day to have an update for documentation there. The initial plan was that Rajiv would go to the conference, but we have issues with visas, etc. So now we need a plan B. But yeah, do we have any other topics?
Did you say you're short of topics, or?
Yeah, we're quite short of topics for sure.
I can do a I can do an end user presentation if you want on
Right
the Prometheus service. If you want,
Sure.
it's up to you. Like, we can talk about our agenda, and if we have time, I can. If anyone's interested,
So we basically have two options. One, if it's a bigger presentation, we can announce it, so we can do a live broadcast maybe next week if you're able. Or if you just want to show and share your experiences, we can do it now too.
Yeah, I think maybe I can share my experiences at the moment, and then I'd like to bring a couple maintainers in to have a discussion, because, in my opinion, it needs to be reworked. It needs quite a lot of work, especially if it's going to be in the LTS. What are we talking about?
So do you want to do it now? Because so some inside information, for example, from Dynatrace. So our team in Klagenfurt has a fire drill. So
okay, yeah, but I can wait.
Cannot get many people on the call right now.
No, that's fine. I can wait. Like, I can do presentations whenever, if we're short of time, especially for new contributors coming.
Okay, so what I suggest, so next week on Thursday, we have a developer meeting at the same time.
Yeah.
So would you be willing to present there? Because it could be a really good
time. Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can do that. I can go at the end.
Okay, so...
Or I can go at the start. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, I normally don't come to the developer meetings, but I'm happy to come for this one.
So just a second.
But, to be honest, they feel like work to me. With all the Dynatrace people like reading off their updates, I like the community ones better.
Yeah, so I will definitely announce it.
Not so much issues, but just right. So I'll give you like a high level thing of what I'm talking about. So at the moment, the Prometheus service is being made to use the Prometheus community chart, whereas it doesn't work with the Prometheus operator. So this is bad for adoption, because these days people want to use a chart called Cube Prometheus Stack, which has out of the box Grafana, default Prometheus rules, alerts, etc. So it doesn't work with the operator. So this is saying, especially, it's more the configuration of it. So when you go Keptn configure monitoring, that's what we need to look at about the challenges that we'll have going forward especially when people start adopting GitOps first, where the Prometheus service will update the config maps and things like that. So it's just calling out some of that architecture and what we can do in the future.
So basically, what happens when you apply to Prometheus stack? So when the Prometheus integration service applies to the configuration, everything breaks because it just
it doesn't really break, but it won't work because for example, the alert manager. So when you use I can should I show you for 5 minutes? Or do we not want to waste time here?
I'm kind of curious if we can spare the time.
Yeah.
Yep, we have time.
Okay, so let me share my screen.
And Suraj is working on some other integration, so he might enjoy it.
Yeah. So here we can see when we have the Prometheus service, essentially in the Keptn CLI, what it will do is it will send a cloud event to this just to configure your Prometheus. So you'll have, let me see if I have my code. Yeah, so
I think you're talking about how Prometheus service handles configure monitoring event right now, and it has strong dependency on the community chart instead of the custom resource that the Prometheus stack provides.
Correct. So if you look at essentially the Keptn CLI, when you go configure monitoring, we'll call the configure event handler, and that will do a series of things. So you don't need to use this. So I don't actually use the configure. I do it myself because it's quite apparent, like naming conventions as well, which makes sense, but not for everyone starting out. So I've done lots of analysis around compared both the charts for Prometheus community and the operator, and the operator won't contain the config maps that the Prometheus chart do as well. So the configuration doesn't work, but I have the get SLI part working with the operator, which works good. So I just wanted to share my experience with how I've done that and implemented that for the quality gate with Prometheus operator. I think it's because there's actually a couple of issues on, well, there's one issue of a few people raising it before, but I think they were a little bit scared to keep talking about it. They might not have understood it and dug as deep as I did on it, but I think it's good. Like I have a solid understanding of how it works now, so it will be good to present that to the developer meeting, I think.
Oh, that's good. Have you talked to Andy about this either?
Not yet. I talked to Andy about other services, but not Prometheus yet. But
all I know, I don't know any details, but a couple of weeks ago we were talking about something, and he'd run it. He just made a passing comment that he was seeing that the Prometheus integration wasn't as high quality as it should be, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And this may be this may be his issue, or he may have others.
Yeah, I know the work involved to make this better, but yeah, I'd like to talk to like Andy, and Thomas would be good if he can come as well, because it's going to relate to the GitOps stuff in the future as well.
Okay.
Prometheus service Keptn. I'll just show you a issue on it that someone raised about a year ago, which I found. This one, so it's a type feature. So support Prometheus deployed via Prometheus operator. So it's exactly what I came into, and I reached out to my friends as well and said, in terms of Prometheus, Grafana, etc., how do you do it? And they do it the same way as me, because it's, in my opinion, this way is sort of it's good, but I think we should, if we're saying that for LTS that we're going to support Prometheus, we should definitely support the operator as well.
Okay. So issue
Mhm.
193 you wanted assigned to you?
It's a big task, but I'm happy to change the work. But it would need a actually it said I said last night that I was analysis, but a lot of my analysis is done. I spent a couple of days
Mhm.
doing it, so I can present that back at the meeting. It's a big change, but it's required.
Yeah, definitely it's required for longer term.
Yeah,
And yeah, you made a note about this issue.
yeah. So
S-
I'll present back what I said today, like but
Mhm.
in more, technical analysis, like more evidence and etc. So that's what I was working on this week. But yeah, it's the get SLI works really well, but in terms of the configuration, and I think the documentation for Prometheus service is not good enough either. It needs more work, which I'm happy to help with as well. Because it's assuming that you know a lot of stuff. So I had to go through all the code to sort of see how it works. So I think it needs like quite a few more steps into it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's an update from me anyway
Yeah.
about what I've been working on.
So it's still a feature request, of course, but yeah, I think that it's quite important to add it. So I will add it to my scope. And yeah, so one of the topics to keep in mind that Christian, he's moving on from the Prometheus service. So he still helps us with support and maintenance, but yeah, we will need to identify another maintainer, and this is why it's important topic, because it could be firstly quite useful onboarding task for knowledge transfers. So I will put it on the list.
Yeah, that's right.
Mhm.
I'm happy to do the work as well.
Yeah, thank you. So, and yeah, maybe since we are talking about integration services anyway, I could just show you a very draft proposal about Keptn Lighthouse as a sub-project. So it's something that I'm still yet to discuss widely in the community. I'm just evaluating feasibility. But yeah, if you're interested, I can show it to you right now.
Yeah, sure.
I guess for Suresh it would be quite interesting too. I wanted to discuss some bits tomorrow at our call, but yeah, I can show it now.
Yep.
So, have you already heard about the project called OpenSLO?
Yes.
So basically, OpenSLO is a standard suggested by Noble 9 to standardize SLO evaluations. So there is a standard and a few tools, including ones that allow to show some dashboards, etc., based on the standard and the specification itself for evaluations, etc. The problem with the standard is that even if it exists, it's not widely adopted at the moment. Actually, we had a number of discussions about whether we should adopt it in Keptn, etc. And yeah, a few weeks ago, I started looking whether it would be technically feasible for us and what would be the cost for that. Actually, just to show some context, for me, the biggest problem was that in Keptn, we basically have our own engine for evaluating SLOs, our standard for sending events, and currently it looks like that. So basically, we have Keptn Lighthouse service. We have a slide provider services, including Prometheus. We discussed the Datadog and Sumo Logic and Dynatrace. And basically, they are adapters that provide SLIs that can be later evaluated by Keptn's Lighthouse, which has its own logic for SLOs. So there is a definition which we follow. This one. So it's basically like that, and it's universal. This definition, to some extent, is closer to what OpenSLO has to offer. So for OpenSLO, they have definitions like that with some targets, with some comparisons, with target values, and actually one important thing, they have budgeting support. In Keptn, we don't have a slow budgets implemented on the Keptn level. So if you wanted to implement the slow budgets in Keptn, you would have had to put them somehow in the observability provider and then just query them as metrics, because Keptn itself has no database to even store them. So my idea was that actually this part is quite generic. So what if we standardize it by actually putting OpenSLO support in the service itself, exposing a slow compatible web interface, and probably adopting more standards, like, for example, OpenTelemetry for traceability, also providing some REST APIs for querying evaluations, and sending OpenSLO data over cloud events too. So in this case, we could keep our SLI provider services, our SLI YAML format, and for SLOs, we could probably support two formats. One is Keptn, and another one is OpenSLO. So I spent some time discussing it with developers, and it seems feasible on the Keptn side. So it's possible to detach the services like that. Obviously, you need to disconnect them from control plane, maybe create new charts, wire them together, but in principle, it's possible. And actually, it's also possible from the OpenSLO standpoint. So last week we had a first conversation with a few people from OpenSLO steering committee, and my conclusion is that we actually can do that. So the biggest differentiation for us from OpenSLO standpoint, it doesn't support comparisons against the baseline, which could be added to the standard. And from Keptn side, we have a few limitations, like we support only one SLI source for SLO. In OpenSLO, it is abstract, so for me it's a limitation. And another one is, of course, a SLO budget. So basically what we discussed, if the OpenSLO standard could be slightly adapted, we could make Keptn compatible with it, and we could formally adopt it and provide open source implementation for OpenSLO, which is missing at the moment. So for that, yeah, we would need to have some specification for SLO events. So when we have Keptn events specification, this specification could be somehow upstreamed to OpenSLO and adapted to the standard. Also, we could add some capability flags to remove budgets. We have could have actions for sending events like in Keptn, and add some comparison. But all of that seems technically feasible, and if we could do that, we could formally adopt OpenSLO in Keptn as one added value. And secondly, we could detach Keptn Lighthouse as a kind of standalone component, maybe sub-project like lifecycle controller that can be actually used not just by Keptn, but by any other system. So if we start submitting cloud events, if we send the data through OpenTelemetry, metrics, and traces, this would be a pluggable component that provides various kinds of SLO evaluations for the Kubernetes ecosystem. At the moment, there is no project that would do that, and I think that it could be a good addition for the ecosystem.
Yeah, that's very cool. I like the idea of bringing budgets in as well.
So, yeah, so this idea is just cooking. I mean, there is no time commitment, resource commitment, etc. I want to work with a few other projects to see whether it would be feasible. There is another project on my radars which is called Pira. So I'm not sure whether you, Brad, or Suresh heard about it.
No.
So it's actually a project that integrates with Prometheus only and allows exposing SLOs, mostly some dashboarding, etc. So it's created by Polar Signals.
Very cool.
But yeah, it's probably another project to talk to because it feels that there might be some overlap or opportunities for integrations. Because if you work on this project, right now we are definitely not creating UI or other components. But if you provide proper REST API, maybe it could be connected to tools like Pira as well.
I had a question around the image that you showed in the slideshow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's an outward pointing arrow on OpenSLO, right? So is the idea that we are going to export, convert the SLO that we have and export it as OpenSLO?
Yeah. So the thing that OpenSLO has no export format at the moment. So what it has actually, it's just this block. Yeah, I'm editing right away. So it has a definition format. But this definition format could be also somehow extracted. So if you had a standard for SLO events and data like JSON, we could easily export it outside. So for me, it would be rather like that. So it would be cloud event sending data in a standardized OpenSLO format. And pretty much the same for OpenTelemetry. So it would be also standardized in OpenSLO. So in fact, it would rather look like that.
So I get the idea of using OpenSLO because we would be essentially standardizing our SLO, but I don't understand why we also want to export the OpenSLO as a cloud event or with OpenTelemetry. What is the benefit in exporting it?
So that somebody could consume it. So for example, you send a standard event like SLO violation. It's sent as cloud event, so you can subscribe any tool within cloud events ecosystem to handle this event. So just to show you example, so if you take cloud events, so the list of adopters is actually quite impressive, including Keptn, by the way. So it means that if you have a standard event that which is sent through cloud events, you can subscribe any of these tools to do something. So for example, Keptn can react to these events and perform auto remediation. The same could be done with directive, with key native events if you wish, or you could connect another tool just for analytics purposes.
So it's just like giving a plug that anybody can
Exactly.
giving a
Yeah.
bucket that anybody can plug into essentially
Yeah.
and do
Yep.
It's
whatever they
for
want to.
interoperability between tools, so they speak a common language and they understand each other without integration.
Yeah, makes sense.
Exactly.
So is the idea that, and I know this might be in the future, and we might not do it immediately, but is the idea that we might Lighthouse service might become the implementation for OpenSLO, like one of the implementation for OpenSLO, or
Yeah.
okay, cool. Yeah,
So it
because
would be still Keptn. I mean, I see no reason why we should drop support for Keptn definition standard at the moment, but it could also implement OpenSLO definition standard.
yeah,
So it
I
means
think
that
eventually, go on. Sorry, please finish what you're saying.
yeah. So just wanted to say that yeah, it could become a reference implementation for OpenSLO, wherein that we can contribute things that we need in OpenSLO. For example, the choke point for me right now is SLO budgets, because if you wanted to implement SLO budgets in Keptn, we would have had to implement 3 algorithms which are currently supported by OpenSLO. So the occurrences, time slices, ratio time slices, and we just have no infrastructure, no tooling to implement that in Keptn right now. So if you wanted to fully implement the standard right away, it would be quite a massive endeavor. So the idea is that we contribute some bits of the specification, some capability flags right into the spec. If maintainers agree with it, then we have a new version of OpenSLO specification, and Keptn adopts this new version.
I see.
Mhm.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So bonus points for us are that basically all the SLI providers that we use in Keptn, in theory, without any modification, they could remain in this system. The keyword in theory. In practice, yeah, it might require some changes. But if you do that, then basically we can have these components basically helping wider ecosystem, not just Keptn.
Very cool.
So yeah, again, disclaimer, it's just initial discussion. So we need to talk to stakeholders. We had a conversation with Noble9 and with OpenSLO maintainers recently, but it's just a discussion without any commitment at the moment. Yeah, we'll be definitely looking for some more feedback, etc., before we go public, because I think that we need more contributors from outside Keptn ecosystem to pull this project off. But I think it's a good opportunity to grow the community and actually to grow adoption of Keptn.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, this is why the question Brett brought up about Prometheus and integrations is, for me, it's more than relevant. So we still have Keptn LCS maybe in 1 month or so. And basically the same for Datadog integration service by UserEdge. If we could promote it to Contrib, to LCS, it could be also a good addition to the ecosystem, because many people use Datadog. Prometheus is our first-class citizen implementation, at least it should be. And if we make it a kind of public service, then I think that there would be some extra value for the ecosystem.
For sure. It's like getting started using Prometheus as well to start with. And if we, because Keptn's like an interface, if you wanted to smack on data trace later, it would be if you use OpenTelemetry and do
Yes.
things.
So speaking vendor-wise, yes, if you have standard SLO definition, you can basically change observability providers quite freely.
Yeah, that's a good sell. A good sell to people to adopt it, because if you think about all these people that get tools like Dynatrace New Relic, they buy it, they spend $200,000 a year, and it takes them a year to implement it because they realize that they don't have tracing, they don't have structured logging. I think this is going to be really good for the ecosystem.
So yeah, this is basically what's cooking at the moment. But yeah, I think it would be another topic to discuss at the Keptn Community Day.
Yeah. Do we need to speak? I guess maybe the next couple of, we've still got a month to go, but do we need to speak about anything about that? About the community day?
Yeah, so for Community Day, I hope that we finally publish a program this week. So the problem is that the CNCF decided not to publish our initial program because we violated diversity requirements of the Linux Foundation. So we needed to add basically speakers with diverse background to the agenda. It took some time to reach out, but we have a solution. So hopefully today it will be published. And yeah, so I'm not sure whether you have seen the agenda.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Just a second, I'll share my screen again. Okay, so here we have the initial agenda. So we will have a short state of the union in the morning, while it's on the morning, because then many people had to GitOps event, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
Basically, Thomas suggested that we do it on the morning. Then we will have workshop for whomever interested in Keptn. So Andy will drive it. Then there is a lunch break, and then we basically start sessions. So we will have session with Brett and Sergio about Keptn and interoperability. Then Andy will share user adoption stories. Then Alois will talk about his vision for Keptn, including, I believe, lifecycle controller and other projects for data operations. And then we have a slot reserved for Keptn lifecycle controller demo, which is currently cooking. And then we have 90 minutes or 2 hours for on-conference tracks. So this was the originally submitted schedule. I will add 2 more talks there. But yeah, more or less it's what we have on the plan.
Nice. And the Keptn maintainer track, do you have to submit that this week? Do you?
Well, I had to submit it quite a while ago, to be honest.
Okay. Do you know
but
what day it's going to be? Has it been published yet?
So we need an information from the CNCF, but it will be during the main track days.
Okay.
So they think that we basically had a number of speakers. So Anna also agreed to participate. So if somebody is not available, we will just adjust the speaker lineup accordingly. But the idea is to have basically many community members there.
Yeah. Cool.
So I will submit it, and yeah, once I have a slot, I will send the information to everyone. So just let's hope there will be no tornado or whatever in Detroit, because yeah, DevOps World just got cancelled.
Yeah, we should get the Keptn Cat Jam t-shirts for swag this year.
We should. So for Schwag, David Hirsch is driving logistics. So there should be t-shirts for the community day. Also, there would be stickers, etc. I don't think there will be anything specific because, yeah, budgeting this year is more complicated than it should be. Let's say so. But yeah. I hope that we will have basic Schwag at least.
Cool. It's going to be exciting. Shame you can't come.
So, anything else to discuss today?
I just had one question around lifecycle controller. What is the current state of system? I went through the issues, the README, the documentation, and I see a lot of things happening.
Okay, so basically last week we had a quick conversation at the developer meeting, but yeah, lifecycle controller is basically an experimental project. So Giovanni and the team are looking into that. And the idea
I was there last week, Oleg, in the meeting.
So what's going on there? A bunch of experiments. Let's say so.
Right. I went through the issues. I went through the README and all of that. My question is, do you have any idea around the current state of the system? Because I see just so many things happening right now. And I'm not sure what is the current state of the system. I was going to ask the same question in the Slack, but
Mhm.
since we are here.
So the current state of the system is that first proof of concept is work in progress. So there is a kind of hackathon going on, and yeah, hopefully within the next few weeks we will have something to present. So right now they're just looking, they're implementing things here and there. There is a very crude implementation at the moment, but not something ready to show. So the target, so Thomas already asked for a slot at Keptn Community Day to do the full demo, what it would look like. So I think that maybe next week, the developer meeting could be a good venue to see the progress.
I see.
Mhm.
That answers my question. Thank you.
But yeah, there is a bunch of hacking going there. So let's see where it ends up.
Okay.
So basically, that's all, at least from my side. And yeah, if you have missed the previous developer meeting, we agreed that the next Keptn release 0.20 would be actually Keptn 1.0 LCS. So for that, we had a 0.19 release 2 weeks ago. And for 0.20, they don't plan any incompatible changes at the moment. So we could safely assume it would be LCS unless something changes drastically over the coming weeks. So for Keptn Core, the part is solved. For integration services, we still need to work on that.
Yeah, because if you're taking the distributor out for the zero downtime, that's quite a massive change.
Yeah.
Because I think,
And
for example, the job executor service might not work at the moment in 0.19 because of that change, maybe. I haven't checked it yet.
works on my machine.
Okay, cool. I was going to check it tonight.
Yeah, I know that some bits do not work. For example, Dynatrace integration service. Prometheus, I believe it was updated for 0.19 already.
Okay.
I will double check, but yeah, generally
Yeah, I think it is.
there are some changes, but yeah, I would rather try to get them into LCS so that we don't immediately get into supporting two branches with serious differentiation.
Yeah.
So for Prometheus, I'm just looking. So it's compatible with 18, and I assume it should be compatible with 19. So anyway, it's something that we will need to work on.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of releasing LCS is to provide something stable.
Have you considered the concept of like a sub-maintainer that looks after a specific domain or service?
Well, in practice, we have it. So
Okay.
in practice, Prometheus services was maintained by Christian, database services maintained by Suresh, for example. Job executor service was maintained by Christian and the team too. So if anyone wants to step up as a sub-maintainer, basically we have this framework in practice. It's not codified, and I don't see much reason to codify it at the moment. But yeah, well, I approach Jenkins way, where basically maintainers of particular service have almost full freedom when working on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to step up as a maintainer of Prometheus service, I guess you're more than welcome. We can chat with Christian and with the team, or same for other services.
Sure.
But yeah, for LCS, we clearly have an issue with some services that are actively used and some services that are not maintained at all.
Yeah.
Sadly, for example, Argo rollouts service is not maintained. Or there's a bunch of other services, especially in Sandbox, which are not actively maintained. And for them, of course, we cannot include them into the LCS.
Yeah.
And but even for Contrib, yeah, there is this Argo service, there is notification service which kind of works. It just doesn't make much sense taking that we have webhook service at the moment. And then we have Helm and Gmeter service, which we just detached from the core. And we still need somebody to step up and take maintenance of them if we want to have them sustainable in longer term. So not all services would go into LCS at the moment,
Yeah.
but
I
this
can-
list we extend over time. It's just drastically painful to exclude services. So I would rather just start from a very small set.
I can talk to Andy about the Argo service because I know that very well also. If he needs help with it.
Yeah. And I guess we also wanted to have a sync up. So yeah, I think we should finally schedule it.
Yep.
I would be interested in Prometheus and Helm service, but it's all time for me. I'm interested in too many things.
Yeah. So I'm just taking it easy. So your contributions are welcome everywhere. At the same time, committing to the maintenance, yeah, it's a major commitment. So at the moment, if you want to contribute to a service, you're more than welcome. Maintenance, yeah, well, eventually
I
you get
am maintaining the dog, so I know.
So at the worst point in Jenkins, I was officially maintaining 30 plugins, also the
Wow.
Jenkins core, Jenkins remoting, and a few other bits. And I was
Sounds a
terrible
lot.
at maintenance for plugins.
Did you sleep?
Not enough. And then my
That's
son was
the-
born, and I didn't sleep at all, and I stepped down from basically everything over time. But yeah, so I'm not going to try it again here.
Maintaining release schedule for 32 services sounds like a pain.
Yeah. So let's see. In any case, the number of services in Keptn isn't that big. There is some unified tooling, so we should be fine. But yeah, for now, my suggestion is to just focus on the components that are mission critical to the system.
Sure.
Okay, so anything else for today?
No, all good.
I'm good.
So, Mac, what if we make are you still available in 1 hour after JNM's presentation?
Am I staying around for that? Yes.
Okay, so maybe we just do sync up on the community day talk a bit later. And sorry
Okay,
for moving
whatever.
to be. Okay, then
Okay.
thanks everyone. So
Thanks,
for
everyone. Good
tomorrow,
meeting.
yeah, for tomorrow I think we cancel the US community meeting. So last time nobody came there, so we had a good conversation today, and yeah, I don't see much point in doing a meeting tomorrow.
Yep.
I will ask in the chat if nobody wants it, then I cancel.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. Nice talking to everyone. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Thanks all. Bye.
See ya.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.